changes that need to be made? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve
I move that we
the December 21, 2020. Sorry.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Thanks, Tom. Do I have a second?
Second. Dan seconds.
Thank you, Dan. And Jack, will you take the vote?
Brian Mundell,
I abstained since I was not there.
Catherine Landgrave,
Aye.
Dan Butler,
Aye.
Steve Voss,
Aye.
Julie Lux,
Aye.
Tom Schulzenberg,
Aye.
All right.
motion passes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the EDA 2020 annual report, which I would be happy to
I think we have.
give.
I think we have to. You skipped over 4, the election of officers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I switched. Okay, we switched items. Sorry, I had a different arrow.
That's
Yep,
okay.
you're absolutely correct. Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Item 4A, election and appointment of 2021 EDA officers. For the EDA bylaws, the officers of the authority shall consist of a president, vice president, treasurer, assistant treasurer, and a secretary. A commissioner must not serve as president and vice president at the same time. The offices of secretary and assistant treasurer need not be held by a commissioner. The bylaws state that the assistant treasurer shall be the city finance director. The bylaws state that the treasurer shall be the executive director of the authority, and the executive director shall be the city administrator. EDA officers for 2020 were Julie Lux, president, Dan Butler, vice president, Jack Davis, treasurer, Mike Jaworski, assistant treasurer, and Gail Gessner, secretary. Staff recommends that the EDA elect a president and vice president to serve from January 19th, 2021 through January 31st, 2022, and designate the city administrator to serve as treasurer and the finance director as the assistant treasurer, and appoint Carrie Frost as the interim EDA secretary.
Thank you, Jack.
I'd like to make a motion that we. I'd like to nominate Julie Lux for president and Tom Schulzenberg for vice president, and secretary and assistant treasurers to remain as they were from last year, and to nominate Carrie Frost as the secretary.
Discussion. Thank you very much. I would be more than honored to serve as president again. Tom, thoughts? And
That was a very generous nomination on your behalf, Dan. Thank you. I'm more than happy to serve in that capacity as needed. If there are additional duties required, I can certainly look into those more, but I'd be happy to serve them.
excellent. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Steve. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, Jack, will you take the vote?
I have a question.
Oh, absolutely, Brian.
Am I not logged on this meeting? I haven't
Brian?
been told.
You are logged on. In the previous votes, your picture wasn't up, and I inadvertently skipped your vote on the first 2 matters. I certainly apologize.
That's okay. I'm doing you all a favor by I got the video turned off. I voted. I'll vote. You could record my vote as an aye on both of those.
Thank you, Brian.
I am struggling with this telephone here at times, this smartphone.
I'll begin the roll call vote. Brian Bezanson,
Aye.
Brian Mundell,
Aye.
Catherine Landcrane,
Aye.
Dan Butler,
Aye.
Julie Lux,
Aye.
Tom Schulzenberg,
Aye.
motion passes.
And Mayor Voss. Oh, Steve, you're on mute. All right. Excellent. So now we get to the EDA 2020 report. Let me bring this up, which I previously presented to council last week. So I know these meetings are recorded and on different venues. So I always like to tell anyone who is watching virtually. So the role of us in the East Bethel Economic Development Authority, we serve as an advisory body to the city council. So we review and make recommendations to the council regarding marketing and promotion initiatives for our city. And we also promote business retention activities and economic development projects with both new and existing businesses. So first of all, one important partner to the EDA this year has been the Anoka County Regional Economic Authority, also known as AC-RED as their acronym. So it's been a great asset for us to work with Jaquel Hyder, who's the economic development specialist with AC-RED. And we leverage the work that Anoka County is doing on our behalf. So for example, they prepared a survey and completed a report that identifies the different types of companies looking for new locations in Anoka County. And they found many of these end users are light industrial and manufacturing types of businesses. 44% of those prospects would need light industrial zone property with city water and sewer. So unfortunately, at this point in time, East Bethel is limited on lands with which these types of users are permitted. So we'll be talking about that later on in the agenda tonight. But once the comp plan is approved, staff and EDA will begin discussions about the possibility of adding more light industrial and manufactured zone land to attract these businesses to our city. Additionally, we've had discussions with AC-RED regarding strategies to improve and expand the broadband and high-speed internet service in our community and potential funding sources for our underserved area. So AC-RED hosted a Fiber Summer Summit WebEx meeting spring to begin discussions with Northern Anoka County communities and the service providers. So they're in the process of creating a Google shared folder that will list fiber projects city by city within the county, and then along with what gap financing might be available for those areas. So the plan was to have a resources for community partners folder, which would include a speed test website where a resident or a business could input their address that feel they have poor or no service, and they can have a download and latency speeds ran for that address. And then there'll also be mapping resources and Mindeed broadband grant information. So following up on that, December 11th, 2020, staff met with AC-RED for an update on the project. There's a potential for a community development block grant fund through Anoka County to increase services due to COVID, and staff will explore the options of this program. And Arvig, which is a central Minnesota company providing business and residential services for internet, cable, phone, and security, they plan to install fiber on the west side of Highway 65 up to 237th Avenue within the next 5 years. So the intent of the project is to serve properties up to 1 mile from Highway 65 east or west. So EDA funds could be used to assist with the funding of fiber projects as long as we can prove that the fiber has an effect on economic development. And expansion of broadband service is a 2020 priority objective of our EDA. So we've had some great successes throughout 2020, and I just want to go through a few of them for you. U Polar Parts is currently expanding their facility with a 12,000 square foot addition to their existing building, and they're improving their access to Highway 65. East Bethel Village Apartments Phase 2. So at this point, grading, footings, and the building slab have been finished. Now, due to winter weather conditions, the construction on this 68-unit project will resume in the spring, excuse me, spring of 2021. The Dollar General store at 4849 Viking opened in October 2020. Excuse me a moment. And the final plat for Dollar General at the 209th Avenue Highway 65 location has been approved by the city, and construction of that project should begin in spring of 2021. Cedar Creek Senior Living is now complete. Due to COVID restrictions, that facility did not open until October 2020. Excuse me. And we understand occupancy is currently approximately 30%. Dry air. Viking Preserve. There are 2 homes currently under construction and subdivision, and a total of 24 have been built within the development. And we've got 11 permits for new single-family home construction for 2021 with a permit value of over $2.5 million, and we've got 22 lots remaining to be built in that project. The Highway 65 Viking Development Reduced Conflict intersection. MnDOT has been working to correct the signage, lane marking, and sightline concerns identified by the city at this intersection. And these are details which weren't recognized during the original design phase. So MnDOT's been very responsive and cooperative in working with the city and hearing what we feel the issues are. So that is underway at this point. Aggressive Hydraulics has plans to expand their facility with a 40,000 square foot addition, which will be a $2.8 million investment, creating 20 additional jobs, bringing their total employment to 85. So they'll be requesting TIF for this project, and the city's working with them to assist in the application and support for this financing. And these TIF costs are for infrastructure, which is external to the building, and for sewer and water access charges for the expansion. The Elevage project on January 13th, the East Bethel City Council and Elevage Development Group, they approved a memo of understanding for their mixed-use development that proposes to provide 70,000 square feet of commercial space in up to 150 units of higher density single and multifamily housing. So the trunk water and sewer service and a frontage road is scheduled to be completed by the city by December 1st, 2021. And up to that time, then the developer will begin construction of the first phase of that development expected beginning in July. The CARES Business Relief Grants, the City Council approved an emergency small business grant relief program on September 14th that utilized the Federal CARES Act funds to assist businesses in our community that suffered disruptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this program provided assistance for current payroll obligations, lease or mortgage payments, utilities, accounts payable, and other critical business expenses. So it was subject to applicable state and local peacetime emergency executive orders. And we reviewed the applications, and 198,000 was distributed to 5 local businesses. And then just a summary, additionally, 7 commercial construction projects with a permit valuation of $2 million, and then 2 commercial addition projects with a permit value of 1.3, which started in 2020. And for single family homes, we had 41 permits with a value of 11.1 million. And of this, 20 of those permits were for homes served by our municipal water and sewer. So thank you very much, and let me know if you have any questions. I know I went a little quickly, but any questions on what I covered? There is. Oh, go ahead, Jack. I don't believe we have a motion or anything that is required on this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. If there's no questions,
Julie,
yes, go ahead, Dan.
Suggest that in terms of the effectiveness of a grant, block grant for the internet fiber optic project, one of the things I was thinking about in determining whether it would be an aid for the economic development of the city was if that went through, for example, the Arvid example, if Arvid went through, that would be alleviating some traffic and bandwidth from existing services, I would guess, as people switch over to Arvid. So I don't know how they would be able to measure that, but I think that that's something that Jaquel might want to look at in terms of whether it's economically feasible or adds to the economic development of the city. That's it.
You know, and that's a good point. And I don't know if we have, I mean, we've got a timeline of within the next 5 years, but I'm assuming we don't want to stand by and wait for improvements until then. But Jack, has Jaquel talked about, or Mayor Voss, do you have any more information on the timing of the Arvig expansion?
We don't have any at this point. One of the things that we will do beginning here within the next week is get back with Jaquel and see where she is with some of these other meetings we're having with the providers and what the status of the broadband situation is currently.
So just a thought, and Dan, thanks for bringing that up. I wonder, you know, in the past, we at the EDA had different task force to help, and I know broadband was one of these, but I wonder if it calls for an extra effort or a group to just meet and, you know, maybe it's a group of people from the city council or just expanding our discussions with Jaquel on timing and how we can really keep up with this, because as people are working from home, I know myself, I mean, we've got DSL and it's painful. So I would love to hear from others what we could do or any suggestions. Or should we? Oh, go ahead, Steve. And you're on mute. Sorry. Okay.
Julie, one thing we might want to consider is the next meeting we have with Jaquel, which will probably be virtual. Maybe someone from the EDA would like to participate in that. And that way we can at least get the beginnings of some type of a committee action going between staff, city council. We can see if Brian or Steve can participate, and we can get that started from that level.
It would be interesting to hear from our existing city businesses on what their service is like. And so for instance, the East Bethel Senior Building and some of the new apartment buildings, what their experience has been and if that can be improved. And then especially as we get into the next agenda item, you know, expanding areas for light industrial. I mean, with manufacturing and these areas are going to need to be served very well as well. So I'd like to suggest additional meetings, and I for one would be happy to take part in that.
We'll contact Jaquel and see what we can arrange to get started. with another follow-up meeting and make sure that we'll include yourself on the invitation list and keep you posted and see if you're available to that meeting. And if you're not, then maybe we can have somebody else be your alternate.
Jack,
Excellent.
do we still have the results from that BRE survey that we did pertaining to the internet complaints from the city businesses?
Yes, we do. I don't have it at hand, but it's still we still have it.
I'm just wondering if that would be, if that information would still be pertinent to the discussion with them. That say these are some of the results that.
It would be, it would probably be good to get a follow-up on that to see if they've had any improvements in their service, because that was probably done 3 years ago.
Right.
So that would be a good point to follow up on what those complaints were in that report.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think it would be at least a great baseline, and then just to have record of who our BRNE task force talked to, and we've got a few new businesses, and so I think that would be great follow-up. All right, thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, light industrial needs and zoning discussions.
Thank you, Julie. In December 2019, Jaquel Hyder with Anoka County Regional Economic Development made a presentation to the EDA regarding business industrial selection needs. Her report identified the types of companies looking for new locations in Anoka County. Many of the end users are light industrial manufacturing type businesses. 44% of those prospects were seeking light industrial zone property with city water and sewer. AC Red sees East Bethel as an ideal location for manufacturing, distribution businesses, and office users needing assembly space. One of our advantages is the land cost in East Bethel is approximately 35 to 80% cheaper than in Minneapolis and most of the southern communities in Anoka County. Ms. Hyder informed the EDA that businesses are looking to move to the outer metro areas as opposed to being in downtown Minneapolis in the inner ring of suburbs. Commuting and the uncertainty of the civil environment in Minneapolis-St. Paul are making the outer suburb rings more attractive to site selectors and businesses seeking to relocate to establish locations in the metro area. While East Bethel is limited as to properties that meet these requirements, staff will review and discuss the current conditions regarding the addition of more light industrial zone land to attract these types of businesses to the city. At the end of the presentation, staff will recommend that EDA begin discussions regarding manufacturing, service type businesses relative to the needs of both the expansion and modification of light industrial zoning to accommodate these types of users. I'm going to go through some of these attachments. There's some slides that I'll go through to help explain some of the things that we're looking at. But just a basic overview of our problems with light industrial zone land is that although we have a wealth of property that's zoned in this classification, there's approximately 748 acres. There's only a small amount that's available, and an even smaller amount that's served by city water and sewer. The concerns relating to this problem are, of this 748 acres, 157 acres have wetlands issues. Availability is a critical concern. It's 362 acres, or 42% of the zoned area, are owned by 4 landowners who have at this time shown no inclination to sell in the near future. And 170 of these acres are developed with light industrial or existing service businesses or other users. So that essentially leaves approximately 59 acres available currently in the market for this. We've identified 3 nodes of development in the city. That's our current city utilities district, which goes from 181st Avenue to Viking Boulevard. The Sims Road growth area, which stretches from essentially Klondike, 224th Avenue, and the Cooper's Corner growth area between 226th and 245th Avenue. See if I can share this. Can you see these slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the
Yes.
first slide is a graphic representation of what light industrial zone properties we have in our current city utility service area. The gray area is the total area that's zoned light industrial. The black crosshatched area within that gray area are properties that are currently developed in this. Going to the next slide shows the aerial photograph of what is available currently in this area. As a point of reference, this is the theater where the cursor is. This is Aggressive Hydraulics. This is Cambria Hills. There's approximately 18 acres north and northwest of Advantage Construction Company. Of that, 5 acres may not exactly be available. That's this portion right here. It's owned by T&G Land, which has a building and a house on it. This portion here, 4 acres, which is just south of Aggressive Hydraulics. 2 acres of this property may be in the process of being sold at this time. This portion right here is owned by Aggressive Hydraulics and is part of their future expansion area. Just to the west and across the street from this theater, there's approximately 6 acres. South of the theater, there's 6 acres, but this is a different zone. This is a B3 business zone. And just north of Shaw Trucking, there's 8 acres and 2 lots, but these are residential uses. These are the only properties in the city that are served by water and sewer that are zoned light industrial. So that greatly limits our prospects or properties for prospects to look at when they're looking to locate in this area. In looking to the future, though, we want to take a look at what's currently zoned light industrial and what could be potentially reclassified as light industrial to make better use of our opportunities here once we get water and sewer service in this area. The first area is south of or north of Sims Road. This is Sims Road and Highway 65. Here on the corner is Lynn's Grocery, Post Office, People's Bank as a point of reference. There's quite a bit of property right in here that's zoned light industrial. However, there's a lot of issues with this in regards to wetlands. Split zoning, one property that's owned up here by Hidden Prairie Weddings and Events, which with our latest conversation with that owner, which was probably approximately 3 years ago, they still intend to do that as they find another participant or investor in the project. They had no inclination at that time to use it for any other purposes. There's approximately 20 acres here. Although it's zoned light industrial, it's actually leased to the MPCA for some land for this landfill expansion and some requirements that they had. There's a piece of property over here. It's zoned light industrial, but there's an existing house on here which comprises 13 acres. There's a small site here that's available. Across the road at the northwest quadrant of Sims and 65, there's approximately 60 to 70 acres zoned light industrial. However, the majority of that is wetlands, and what's available is split zoned into light industrial and the B3 highway commercial, which causes some issues in the sale, and rezoning would have to take effect and may or may not be approved. So even though we do have quite a bit of property here, a lot of it is not really usable. Some of this property over here on the east side where the cursor is owned by one owner. That owner owns approximately 300 acres in this area, and he had plans at one time for a different type of development in this area. There is some potential here just south of, in the southeast quadrant, southwest quadrant. We have acquired the right of way in this black dashed line for a particular service road. There's an area here, it's about 60 acres that might make a good change into light industrial when we get into looking at the rezoning in the complex. If we go to the south of Sims Road, down to Klondike, there's no properties that are zoned light industrial. That's probably okay. Keep in mind too that if something's zoned light industrial, it can be used still for two business classifications. If we go up to Cooper's Corner, north, that's 237th. This is traffic light. This is the gas station and subway. This is where we have the most property in the city zoned light industrial. There's approximately 265 acres zoned light industrial that are vacant. However, there are no utilities here. There is the possibility at this time for some limited sewer service. However, it will probably cost $1 million to make this available to this property. Also, too, we have landowners here who have indicated in past conversations with the city that they intend to keep this property for its current use, which is agriculture. The shaded areas show areas that have been developed for light industrial use within this north section of Cooper's Corner. In the south section of Cooper's Corner, south of 237th, there's a strip of land that's on the west side that's zoned light industrial. However, due to existing development and other uses, there's only approximately 7, 10, 13, 19 acres that are here that are for development, and none of these have water and sewer services. So what our challenge is to find the best acreage we have in the city that's most suitable for light industrial. And when we talk about rezoning and changing the zoning ordinance, which will probably start those discussions in March, is to come up with a way to find some properties that can be reclassified into this zoning classification that have the potential to be available and have the potential to be served by utilities at some point in the future. So I think the basic questions that we need to ask and try to seek answers to are, number one, in our ordinance, is the definition and standards for light industrial use sufficient to address the needs for this classification? How much acreage do we really need for this? What can be done to address utility needs for properties outside the current city service areas? And also, is there a need to even consider another classification of industrial use, which would be a medium or a heavy industrial use to attract other types of industrial users? So I just want to bring this to everybody's attention to see what we're dealing with and to try to get any comments or recommendations that you may have or your thoughts or feelings on this matter.
Jack, after we had the CST applied go up by Cooper's Corner, and that was the first time that the light industrial zoning ordinance were really tested since they were redefined in 2008. After that called episode with CST, were those light industrial that all that was that ordinance revised as to alleviate all those gray areas and better define what kind of businesses would be allowed in light industrial?
Brian, it was, and the biggest change in that ordinance to address that problem was that light industrial users could have not exceed exterior storage in the amount of the square footage of their building. So in the case of CST, where they had maybe about 20,000 square feet of building area proposed. They had 25 acres of outdoor storage. So under the current ordinance now, you can only have foot for foot. So a 20,000 square foot building would mean you could only have 20,000 square feet of outdoor storage. There were also some things tightened up in the definition relating to what uses were permitted there. And basically, these resulted in environmental concerns relating to noise, air pollution, and traffic.
Okay. With that, I don't know how much property would be available for medium or heavy industrial, depending on the use. Because knowing with what we had with CST, if that wasn't light industrial, could have been maybe medium. There was a vast community outcry against it, and majority of this light industrial land that we have, you can throw a rock and you can probably hit a residence. So that's just my feeling on medium and heavy industrial.
Yeah, that's correct. And with these other smaller parcels that are available, like you say, they all essentially abut residential areas. Even these larger parcels on the east side still have some common boundaries with residential zones. There are provisions in the ordinance for screening between the two. But the thing that we have to be careful with is to make sure that the conflicts between the two are greatly reduced and minimized so that there's no potential issues like the CST when it came up in 2016.
Would it be possible to have a buffer zone, like with housing developments, you go from, say, housing to townhouses to apartments, with the townhouses being a buffer? Would there be any sort of buffer that we could put between light industrial and residential?
There could be. We've been looking at buffers in this case in terms more of landscaping or vegetative type screening rather than uses. But that's something we could explore. Hopefully coming to a council work meeting in March and possibly as early as February, we'll start discussing how the new zoning is going to integrate with the comp plan and possibly propose some new zoning classifications within the comp plan to address some things that may have been overlooked in its development.
Okay.
I think this is Brian Zanson. I think one of the things that's really key to any type of industrial, be it light, medium, or heavy, is fire protection. You know, with my background, that's something that I've had to deal with a lot. And it was always easy to have fire protection in the buildings that I built. I think that what we're dealing with here as a real serious challenge for a high value type of light industrial situation is that we have to be able to site it down in the municipal service area zone that we have, the utility zone. And I would throw out the idea of, you know, maybe we need to look at the backside of the 40 on the northwest corner of 65 and Viking. Somewhere down in there that is wide open for development, it appears at this point in time.
Yeah, you're correct, Brian. And just because we show these slides doesn't limit that search for these other properties. To serve the immediate needs, it would really need to be located somewhere closer to the Viking Boulevard intersection. And you're absolutely correct. Water is very critical in terms of fire protection and insurance rates. And sometimes it's even used in the manufacturing process. However, I don't think that firms that are going to come up here are going to be big water users, except for kind of their domestic uses within the building. But the fire protection is the big thing. In fact, that was a critical component for aggressive hydraulics when they located here, is that they had to be on a public water supply so they could have fire protection within their building. In terms of extending services, we're looking at, 10 years down the road and beyond for probably the Sims, and maybe even longer for Cooper's Corner. So there's going to have to be some search efforts made in the Viking Boulevard node to see if we're going to be able to accommodate anything beyond what's shown on these slides.
I totally get it. I know from my involvement at Our Saviors that when the fire protection being added into the building, well after construction had started, they were in the construction phase. It wasn't design and development anymore. Was a significant hit to the church's budget at that point in time. That's, like I said, it's just fire protections is there. You have to have it. And I didn't see where we were going to be bringing in a large commercial type of water usage facility other than, I don't know if data centers go through that much water, or if it's, if they try to cool with water on their hardware. That'd be the only thing that I would think of. And who knows, maybe that can be served with a well and a gray water well.
Well, a lot of those things that involve cooling requirements, they usually loop or recycle that. So that doesn't increase their water usage to a huge amount. There's somebody that used water in the manufacturing process.
Yeah, I don't see that. I'm not concerned about that, Jack. It was more that to comply with NFPA and UBC, you have to have fire protection.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have.
So, in corresponding with this too, and it's something that will be discussed in the upcoming years, is at some point we're going to be built out within this current utility service area. And then the discussion is, what do we do next? Do we leave it where it is, or do we look at expanding our city water and sewer service? So the expansion of that is going to go hand in hand with some of these rezoning issues and things we're going to look at. Probably it's going to take interest of a major development maybe to precipitate it, but it's something I think that we should definitely start looking at now. It may not come to fruition, or we may not be able to capitalize on it for several more years, but the time to start planning is today.
Jack, I have a question. The statistic you shared on 44 of the prospects were seeking light industrial zone. So, we're seeing almost half of people are looking for this type of property. And as you very accurately displayed here, we have a shortage of this type of needed property, especially the type with city sewer and water. I guess my question is this a matter of if you build it, they will come, or are we seeing a demand for this type of property, which we have a shortage of?
Well, it's if you look at the slide that's exhibited now, within the last 7 years, we've had aggressive hydraulics, advanced construction, second generation chimneys, the apartment complex, and a potential project which may be close to being ready to go here on this site, all because of the water and sewer. Plus, we have the second unit of the apartment. So, in about 7 or 8 years, we've had 6 significant commercial, service business, light industrial development in this area. There's a part of it is build it and they will come. Sometimes you have to be proactive with this, but at the same time too, we have to be financially responsible and make sure that we have monies to pay for any expansions. So it's going to be a real delicate balancing act to achieve both at the same time. So that's why I think it's very important to start looking at these possibilities now. And maybe what we're talking about doesn't happen for 2, 3, 4, 5, even 5 years. But at some point, I think that it will. You know, we're seeing strong evidence that the growth is moving farther north, and it's moving farther north faster every day. So, like I say, one of our competitive advantages is the fact that our land costs are cheaper here. And as the expansion of the population of the metro area goes out into the outer rings, it's going to provide more labor force within that area also. So this is something we got several aspects to look at here, and the time to get started on seeing if we can find solutions, like I say, is sooner rather than later.
Thank you. I think this is a good presentation, and it shows that there is a need, and we have a shortage, even if it might be a perceived shortage. There's still a critical thing that we have to look at in terms of what solutions do we have to increase the amount of this light industrial property with city sewer and water.
And you know, one thing that might happen that could precipitate some extension of our existing service area, say up to the Sims Road, is if we were to have a major commercial development at some point. You know, just looking at things, we're looking at anywhere from maybe now to 10 years. But there's also 2 schools there that could be connected to a system, which, coupled with a major commercial or mixed use development, could maybe provide some incentives or economic justifications to start expansion of service to that area. Does anyone else have any other questions or want to give us any direction on what you'd like to see? Is any kind of follow-up reports or your comments on what we want to do in presentations for discussions for the rezoning and the ordinance change?
Jack, a couple things. I'm sorry, I was trying to come through. First of all, any connections, thoughts with Ham Lake on the east side from the city line up to 181st in terms of traffic? And then secondly, some of the backage areas along 65 south of Viking on the east side, I noted that they're zoned residential. Any thoughts of rezoning some of that to light industrial?
To answer the Ham Lake question first, we did have some discussions with Ham Lake back in 2013. This was due to issues that we're experiencing around crosstown with those businesses in that shopping center. They were actually initiated by Soderquist. They were having severe septic issues. Max Bar had septic issues. Burger King has septic issues. So the businesses there approached us. We approached the city of Ham Lake and just had a brief discussion. At that time, Ham Lake said they wouldn't be opposed to maybe extending service only to those businesses if it didn't require anything in the change of their comp plan. In the interim, though, Soderquist closed and that discussion was dropped. We haven't had any discussions with them since then. I feel at some point, though, that that area may be very interested in some type of utility services. Also, remember too that just north of Max Bar, that there's a stretch of property that runs from Highway 65 all the way back to County Road 68. It's 350 acres. It's about 60 to 70% high ground. It's owned by only 2 or 3 landowners, one of which is the developer, which they may have some interest in that. And if they do, in some higher density uses, we would be in a great position to service them. That's something we've always discussed, and that's why we've been sizing our lines to be able to accommodate that development should it occur. We currently have a sewer line that crosses Highway 65 and actually goes over to the Osborne property, which at some point in the future would be extended southward down to Briarwood, and then on that backage street, which I believe is Davenport, that could be extended down to the Ham Lake corporate limits, provided they had some users that could pay for it, and service a great deal of the area between Crosstown and East Bethel for both existing businesses and any potential for development on that large tract. In answer to your other question about areas on the east side for light industrial, that's certainly a possibility. There's one property down there. It's 2 properties, actually, one south of Briarwood and one just north of Briarwood, that could be reclassified as light industrial and could be fairly easily served by city water and sewer service.
One last question. Have we heard anything from from Mr. King at all about the northwest corner of Viking and 65?
No, we haven't had any conversations with Mr. King probably in about 2 to 3 years. We've informed him of several developments that were happening and requested or invited them to some meetings, but we haven't had any dialogue with them. It's been quite a while.
Thank you.
I have a quick question related to what is our largest contiguous site that is both zoned light industrial and has city water and service capacity?
The largest contiguous site that we currently have, Julie, is 18 acres.
Okay.
It's this side in the classic commercial park. However, due to its configuration, it's probably closer to about 12 to 13 acres.
Okay. So I'm seeing these images, and then as that relates to the survey that Jaquel did for Anoka County Regional Economic Development, do we know the approximate size of those prospective new businesses or expansions, what size sites they're looking for?
I didn't see that information, but I would say they probably range from anywhere from 20,000 to maybe 100,000 square feet.
Okay.
As an example, Aggressive Hydraulics building, their initial building or their building as it is now is 60,000 square feet.
Okay.
But there may be some that are starting out smaller that will probably need sites that can be expandable.
So I haven't looked lately in the past, and I know this has been a different year, but I can't recall if it wasn't Mindeed, but it was the other economic development arm of Mindeed that was putting out calls for RFPs, or they were working with communities or users, potential users that were looking for space. Are we still on that distribution list, or are we watching that website?
You're talking about MSP?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And the problem with those and all the requests that we get for site information or people that are looking for businesses is that, number one, most of them are looking for sites with existing buildings because they want to occupy them quickly.
Sure.
And even those that aren't are looking for basically sites served by city water and sewer. And, we do have some vacant property on the east side of 65. It looks like the majority of it is probably going to develop residentially or in commercially now. But most of those places are looking for, if you're looking for a building, they generally start at about 50,000 going up to several 100,000 square feet.
Right.
We've only been able to submit maybe 3 proposals in, say, 8 years of meeting the site requirements that they've sent out.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. So, what are you looking from the EDA? Is this a discussion? Do we have a motion, or what's our thought?
I don't believe we need a motion. We're just looking for direction on what you would like to be presented with. We want to get your comments on this. We want your input. We want your expertise on what we can provide so that when we do go and start these zoning ordinance finalizations and potential rezoning of some of these tracts in the city, that we get it right the first time. That we don't do something and then we have to come back when everybody wants to buy something, all of a sudden it's zoned commercial, and then we have to try to go through a rezoning effort to get it where it's able to sell. So, even if you don't have any comments tonight, if you want to think about some things, get back to us. We can discuss it at the next meeting further to see if anybody has any additions. Hopefully we'll be able to maybe be a little more updated on where we are and what we're going to be looking for in the comp plan. But I just wanted to bring this up to let everybody know that even though there is a demand for this type of property, we have a lot of land zoned for it, but we have little that meets the requirements and little that's available. So it's just something I think we need to point out, something we need to start working on.
So other than what we've discussed, EDA members, anything else? Any other comments or suggestions? I think we, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have one final point. Maybe we can discuss this at a future meeting. I'm be happy to discuss other potential solutions, one of which Jack mentioned, classification, medium, heavy duty, light duty. Most businesses are looking for light industrial. What would be the advantage of rezoning into medium and heavy duty? Would that give us any further advantage? What would be the potential drawbacks of that? Some scenarios and hypothetical situations like this that we could look at a future meeting. I would like to dive a little bit deeper in.
We can certainly do that, Tom. There's positive and negatives to doing those different types of classifications. I think probably the thoughts around here are that we like to keep everything more light industrial. It's cleaner and there's less conflicts with other land uses. And even if we did that, we'd want to isolate it to a portion of the city that could accommodate it. And we can certainly get some more information on that for everybody's review at the next meeting.
That sounds great. Anyone else?
I think another thought is just especially on the southern end here, where maybe we could access and try to get some more access to water so that we could utilize more of the land and get more business flowing. Because at least on the southern end here, there's probably some potential for that. You know, whereas, you know, when you get up further away, it's probably less likely for us to be able to hook that up and be able to make that happen. But obviously, to be able to attract some more business, we're probably going to need to have more of that city sewer and water connected.
And I agree, Catherine. I think our major focus now is on the south end, how we can maximize what we have there and look for maybe some other opportunities to at least try to find another couple of sites within that area. Because
Right.
the reality of the situation is the system is not going to be expanded beyond this point for some time. We still have several areas to build out here, and we're not near the point where it's going to be a serious conversation about what to do about expansion yet. It's something to think about, but we're not ready to start that conversation.
Right, but it does seem there's kind of a disappointing hiccup here too, like down on this area by 181st and into Ham Lake here, where you know, like it sounds like those businesses developed there, like Burger King and the T-Max bar and all those. It sounds like they've got some hiccups, and if we could get that connected through, then maybe we could resolve some of those hiccups too, and both their city and our city could be working better, and facilitate more business going on. It just seems to me odd that they would have those hiccups and wouldn't want to resolve them, and then there's almost this breaking point too, where Ham Lake stops and then East Bethel doesn't begin, or you know, it's almost a challenge, I guess, to facilitate the business going forward.
Yeah. No, and I think at some point in time that will happen. I think economics will dictate a lot of decisions that will be made in that regard. You know, Ham Lake has decided they don't really want utilities at this point, but there may be some overriding factors in the future that may influence their decision to look in another direction, at least in that northern part of the state.
Right, right. I think that's strange on their part, but I just think it's strange. But I don't know.
But you know, our door is always open for discussion with them, and we've had that one discussion I described in the past, and hopefully maybe it'll come up again in the future sooner rather than later.
Right, I hope so.
Okay, anyone else have any comments on the light industrial needs and rezoning discussion, zoning discussion? If not, we can move on to item number 7, City Council report. And is that going to be Mayor Voss or Brian?
Well, seeing how Steve has no comment, it sounds like. I'm prepared to give a report. For anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Brian Mundell. I'm either your new city council member or your old one. I did serve one term on city council before, and I had the pleasure to serve on this EDA commission as well. So it's good to see Mr. Butler, Julie, and not see Mr. Bonanzin. And looking forward to conversation with our newer members, Catherine and Tom. So we had a city council meeting last week, first one of the year, pretty late meeting. Two of the larger items on it was the cable franchise agreement will be coming up for renewal this year. Right now, it's about every 10 years that it comes up. And all we did at this point was approve the city attorney to handle negotiations for that cable franchise agreement. That will probably be with the Midco supplier. And with that, that will be one area to bring up internet connectivity with them. I think about 5 years ago, we had Midco in front of council and had a discussion with them that did result in some expansion in the city. So hopefully now that we have an agreement to renew with them, that we can leverage maybe something more, or even with the other supplier that we were talking about earlier in the city, that we can make something happen. So anyways, we just approved the city attorney to handle negotiations. We haven't entered into anything yet. They'll take part later this year. The other thing is we had a report on the reserve capacity loan. That is our number of SAC units that we aim to meet every year to push off paying out the reserve capacity loan. Right now, it's looking like we may engage it no sooner than 2024. If we keep up our SAC units, we can keep putting that payment off. This year, our SAC units that were projected to meet would be 100 or 152, and projected that we may actually connect is 100, versus in comparison, 2020 was 130 in our contract, and we had 41 connections. 2019 was 111 in our contract of SAC units to connect, and we actually made 136. So if we actually make it over our contracted amount of SAC unit connections, then that just benefits this and puts off our reserve capacity loan payments. So the takeaway is, if we can get 52 more SAC unit connections over the projected 100 that the city staff has already estimated, that would be fantastic. And I believe that is all I have, unless Steve has something more to add. Steve?
Oh, we hear you loud and clear.
I'm sorry, Steve, I apologize.
Oh, and I was remiss at the beginning not to welcome you back, Brian, as the city council liaison to EDA. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, Julie.
Looking forward to working with you.
Absolutely. And hopefully we can get back to normal and actually have in-person meetings one of these
Right,
days.
right. Well, any other comments or questions? Or if not, I will take a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Jack, if you'll take roll.
Brian Bezanson,
Aye.
Tom Schultenberg,
Aye.
Brian Mundell,
Aye.
Catherine Landcrane,
Aye.
Steve Voss, Dan Butler, Julie Lux.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you so much. Great meeting, and looking forward to further discussion.
Everybody